policies for teacher training with an equality perspective. The goal of the session was analyzing the process and design of implementation of initiatives from the experience, concentrating us in educational policies. Here we had three experiences which were so interesting: El Salvador, Grenada, and Honduras. And the questions we tried to answer were: what progress and setbacks do we see in your countries in terms of teachers training policies with gender perspective, and which articulations are generated? In the last session, we tried to have a viewpoint from the academia. So there we worked about the working on pedagogies with gender equality perspective. We had two experts, Andrea Lira from Magallanes University in Chile and Charmaine from Universidad de Guyana, where the intention was basically to know the viewpoint of the academia in the role of teachers for the development of these pedagogies with a gender perspective. So here the questions, guiding questions, trying to answer were: in which fields we can see the reproduction of sexism in the educational system, and how can we change the situation from the teacher's position? So the interesting thing that we have done is that was representation of 7 of the 10 countries belonging to KIX, and also participation of Argentina, Mexico, and we are really thankful for that. What we tried to do here was recap some of the experiences, some narratives, experiences of the different countries, and see how the topics were addressed in these 4 sessions. From Guatemala, they said that the school operates with the context of a culture, pedagogies, feminist pedagogies, and not sexist, come from resistance. Those are cultural changes, which are not going to be fast or simple, but it is important to start them from the educational institutions. So educational institutions are fundamental for creating these paradigm shifts. El Salvador said we come from a patriarchal society where there are ways of behavior which are so rooted and they're so difficult to eliminate. From Honduras, they said how important it is to do a diagnosis at a local level and also working with teachers, both men and women, because they do not have the pedagogical tools required for the crystallization of education based in gender. And many times, social actors do not accompany this paradigm shift. So what is interesting here is that how these topics that we were working on were aligned with the needs of the countries. For instance, the need for teachers to have the necessary tools to have this paradigm shift over or related to gender. In Haiti, they said it was interesting to talk about the abusive speech of teachers for girls against girls in schools. Most of the times they talk about their gender and the inequality relationship with men. They also mentioned about the importance about talking about the existence or not of policies, former policies in this field. In Grenada, there are situations in the classrooms where there are some rules only for boys or girls, material related to genders, and there was a huge challenge in improving the conditions of learning at schools. In Guyana, they said that inequality is produced because educational systems remain with the patriarchal ideology. What happened in other countries? Of domination, and in many cases, male teachers, through their practice, stimulated, so that there is no true equality within the classroom. In Nicaragua, they tell us that there are some policies for gender equality in the country. We shouldn't forget that this topic should be addressed by families, the state, and by all of the stakeholders related to the educational ecosystem. One of the rich things of this community is the diversity of territories and participants. It is really interesting to observe how these problems and the problems that seem so individual in each of the countries are also regional, and we share some elements, topics, and challenges all together, which go beyond or that are many more than the ones that we think of. So we should keep on working together on these topics in order to identify challenges which are common to all of us. So this is the recap. So I hope we can continue in other cycles participating in these workshops. And Fernanda, the floor is all yours now. Thank you, Maciel. Thank you for this recap of what this community, practice community has been. We have one guest who cannot access yet, so we're going to continue. And then later we're going to give the floor to Vladimir from Fe y Alegría. So as we said before, besides working and getting together and having a space for debate for all of the stakeholders, participants, this is a learning space for this perspective equality, gender equality perspective. Since the beginning, we said that we'd like to be a product, to have a product, create a product, to convey all of these thoughts and knowledge into a product which is useful for us in our territory for understanding how all of these violences and inequalities related to gender work, and how from teachers training can this perspective or problems addressed. In our last session, we presented the structure of the policy brief. It is a synthesis document of policies. We have also developed a theoretical document, a discussion here, and the structure. Today we'll talk about recommendations. So this document of policies has one part which is presenting the inequality situation in territories with emphasis in the gender gaps in the countries, and also knowing which are the policies and programs which are being implemented right now. There's a second part where it focuses on teachers training with a gender perspective. And there's a debate about what does the literature say and what are countries doing, KIX countries. And together with that, there are some reflections coming from the community of practice. To conclude this document, there's a section of recommendations, which is the one we're going to address now. And the idea is that we're going to tell you about these recommendations, what they're about, so we can talk about them and how you see them from the different territories. So to start with, these recommendations come from the literature revision, but also from the thoughts and reflections done in the community practice sessions. And we have sent a form for the voluntary participation of people who'd like to cooperate with ideas for this policy brief. And we also received some recommendations from different people who have been part of this practice community. And we want to thank you, especially to Mariela Celada, Celina Cañas, Natalia Males, Siga Campos, Mr. Gutierrez, Milia Sevillas, Gabriela Arunategui, who have sent some valuable contributions so we can include them in this practice discussion. So a brief summary of these recommendations. First, there's a section of recommendations for the teacher's training. So we start from the most basic element, which is including the affective level and personal history as a starting point for analyzing gender from one's own experience. That is a starting point. So we're all subject to gender and we have some experiences in our life history where there's some role structures from our own, from the social conception of gender. So how do we observe them in order to see what prejudice we have into the teacher's practice, with which prejudice and which structures that are already set in society, and they are within or together our history. The second point, it is analyzing the hidden curriculum, making it more later theoretical and evidence-based training on how gender roles are constructed in history. We need to understand that gender is social, it is built, and through time, through history, in different territories, this role gender, this construction has changed. So it is important, and if it is important, it can also be changed. Later, we need to debate and sensitization regarding the reproduction of gender roles and stereotypes in educational space in order to build an education which is not sexist, not reproducing these roles from the power roles. Fourth, including comprehensive sex education as a cross-cutting aspect of teaching, not only concentrating in biology or gender. A second recommendation group would be, it was suggested and valid, training in the use of participation action research with gender focus for work in schools. This allows teachers to investigate their own practices and strategies for transformation together with their students as a whole. As a recommendation was how the development of tools for working with families and the educational community to raise gender awareness, because we know that school is not working in a void, but in a context, in a neighborhood, and with families. And if we want to work with gender, then we need to work together with people who are around students. Finally, it is important to development of self-care practices for teachers. Gender, it is something which is socially sensitive, and there is spaces where there is plenty of resistance. So this needs to include how teachers take care of themselves when they're working with gender. Finally, we have recommendations which are specific for the classroom. Here we have three recommendations. First, learning to analyze classroom dynamics in terms of gender, power, racial, and ethnic relation, recognizing one's own prejudice. Secondly, analyzing the hidden curriculum, making it more explicitly visible, and teaching boys and girls to critically analyze these structures and norms. And finally, training on the scope and consequences of gender violence and providing tools to act in the classroom to generate a school climate free of violence. So here we have all of the references, everything which is being worked and developed in this practice community, and then there are some other references and bibliography in order to build these recommendations. So I give the floor to Jenny so we can think about these recommendations and how we see it from our own territories. And also, we're going to have some space for Jenny to make some comments. And of course, we'll open the floor for conversation. Thank you, Fernanda. And I want to thank you all, this practice community. Since Maciel has shared the experiences of all of the countries, and we also have recommendations that have been taken from all of the presentations, all of the viewpoints that you have shared. We're concentrating in teachers training, in the curriculum, in the classroom work, how we can accompany teachers in the formative process so this gender's perspective, it is implemented. So we'd like to invite you all. This is a practice community. We're all learning here. We're learning from successful experiences, from challenges, and the next steps that we may have. Family is so important, and the context where we work on, the school is not alone. It is an educational community where there are students, there are teachers, families, but there are also some, some consequences when these processes are not well managed. So our main goal here is educational equality in opportunities for boys and girls. Is any of you, we can participate. This is an open participation. So we can present things for this debate, to strengthen the whole community. So the floor is open for your comments about experiences, recommendations. We're opening the floor. I just want to, Florencio Ceballos from IDRC is here. So before we continue, we want to give him the floor. We want to welcome him. Thank you, Florencio. This is our last session. We have some issues to get the connection, We did a recap of the 4 sessions that we have worked on, and now we are giving the floor for the audience. So we'll give you the floor first. Good morning, everyone. My camera, it is a little bit blurry because my computer is not working well, but it is me. It is me right behind the screen. It is great to see you. It is nice to greet you all. I'm sorry I am late. I couldn't get connected. I was trying to join Google Meet, but I didn't see the Outlook invitation. Anyways, I just want to say that I'm really happy. And it is my pleasure to see how this community, practice community, has been built. It's been built through all of these meetings, all of these participations. I was present in the first one. I participated some minutes in another session and now here. So I've got the impression, and I've talked to many other colleagues, that this conversation is been getting more sophisticated. It is even richer. There are more different ways of comparing experiences from different countries, different realities. So I want to say that this was an experiment somehow of this hub in order to know how this could work. This has been successful, but also has allowed us as KIX understanding some other ways which go beyond shallow meeting. I mean, the first meeting, and we're working with groups who are interested in some topics. So that experience that we're trying to systematize is being taken. It's been taken by some other hubs in Africa and Asia, and we're going to talk about it in a couple of weeks. This is an effective modality of work which can be sustainable through time or for some time in order to go deeper into some topics. So first of all, I'm really happy as a methodology of work. This is working. This works. Of course, there are some limitations. I mean, we're working virtually here, but talking about the content of this work, for us, as KICS, as IDRC and GPE, including gender perspective in the development of innovation, development of public policies in education, it is a core element. Nevertheless, it is also important this not to be a recipe, something being imposed, something which is unique in order to sustain just one approach for these gender equality perspectives and inclusion. It is necessary to build it from your experiences and from the specificities of each of the countries we're working with, because we understand that the realities in each of the countries are different. Possibilities of public policies are also different. And the ways of including a gender perspective from a position which is effective, which can create an impact, varies from one country to another. So therefore, it is really important to do this exercise, where instead of doing or having a training in gender perspective, we should listen to you all so the participants could share knowledge, experiences, and therefore they could learn or getting to know a bit more altogether. So that is really important because that is the way, we think that is the appropriate way of including a gender equality perspective, not imposing something, not, I mean, acknowledging that experience, practical experiences are there in the different countries, in people like you, working from different realities in different countries from research as well. And from there, we should work some common frameworks. So it is really valuable, both in the way we have done it and also the content that we have created. I'm really happy. I want to thank Marcel and Fernanda for having developed this, for insisting. So, I mean, you all got together and this got systematized. This has been so valuable. So, not to spend more time, I just want to wish you all the best in today's meeting and thank you very much on behalf of KIX and all the ones who participate in KIX for this effort that has enlightened us in our work for the future. So, thank you very much. Thank you, Florencio. I just want to emphasize that together with myself, Jenny Rivas from El Salvador, she's one of the ones promoting this practice community. And it's been a joint work with the rest of the community. We have done it all together, and we're really happy of the results that we have obtained. So, Jenny, the floor is yours again. Jenny's been fundamental in this, of course. Thank you. And this is not a closure session. This is a cycle closure only. And we have learned so much. And of course, we want to tell you, Florencio, that, I mean, we congratulate Suma KIX LAC for this big step, because you can see that in this brief that we have worked, I mean, there's plenty of experience here, and all of the countries, I mean, we have the same problems, the same challenges, but also the same willingness to work together from schools. We cannot think in education quality, we cannot think about there will be, we're going to have good quality education if we do not think in the populations and neighborhoods which are vulnerable. Tackling these topics, getting to know this, getting to know you all, and commenting different recommendations that came from the construction of this. So it has been successful. KIX LAC Suma, it is including or having this practice communities in order to know the needs of communities. So, Florencio, we want to thank you for you being here, for what you have said, and all of the people here. We're opening a space for recommendations. Recommendations have been taken from our practice, our own experiences, from our own challenges. So you can also comment about the recommendations that have been provided. These recommendations came from, I want to insist, from your experience. We have many things in common. We are different countries, different languages, 3 languages here, which are being interpreted. And when we see the map that Maciel presented, when we see, when Maciel shows the experiences that we have shared, well, we have the same elements. We are moving, we're working in a context where this is built from home. We need to work with families. We need to, I mean, schools, I mean, it is fundamental in order to rebuild some inequality actions, actions which do not allow us to get to this equality. So the floor is open. We have built this all together, Maciel, Fernanda, and the whole team, which is not seen. It is, I mean, at the back end, it is here, so you can share with you all, with us all. And this community belongs to you. This is a space for you where you can share. Hopefully, this is not a cycle that it is finishing, but hopefully we can keep on sharing experiences. We need to share things for the future. We'll see what's next. So we're here. I am here to cheer you up. You've done a great work sharing and creating, being part of this community. Is there anyone willing to take the floor? Maybe there is someone asking for the floor. You can also write your notes in the chat box. We can also read what you're saying. There's plenty of experience in this teacher training. There are many things with some countries have and some others don't. So that is required. Let us know what things have worked, what things we have in common. If there's no comments, well, we can also keep on working in our agenda, and we can continue or catch up. Or if we see you're writing something in the chat, we can, I mean, address that. Meanwhile, I really invite you for you to make some comments. We're going to present, we have Vladimir from Fe y Alegría Institution. Vladimir, are you there? Vladimir Mairena, he's going to present some guidelines for working with gender perspective. These are some guidelines. I'm going to share his presentation.
No, yo tengo mi presentación, en este caso.
Súper.
Perfect then. So there it is. I will stop sharing. Vladimir, can you share your presentation?
Pues buenos días a todos y
Good
todas.
morning, everyone.
Me ha presentado, pues yo, mi nombre es Vladimir Mairena.
I am Vladimir
Pertenezco a
Mairena.
Fe
I
y
belong to
Alegría,
Fe y Alegría,
y
Nicaragua,
se me ha encomendado poder participar en este
and
espacio
I'm participating in this space,
y pues un poco compartir lo
and
que
I am
ha
sharing
sido como la
what's
experiencia
been
de
our
la,
experience
la metodología, tutoría entre
of
pares
this
y cómo
methodology,
de lo
peer working.
central
One
era
of the
la
main axes
integración
was the
en
integration
perspectiva
or
de
the
género.
gender perspective
Así a
integration.
pequeños rasgos, la
So
tutoría entre
briefly,
pares, pues
this
como se
mentorship
señaló, pues
amongst
esta,
peers,
pues esta viene dada
it comes or it's been done.
cuando hablamos de pares estamos hablando entre
When we talk
niños
about peers, we're
de
talking about people who
son
are
niños y niñas
equals,
de
boys and
edades
girls,
similares
similar
en ese
ages,
sentido y que realizan
and they
lo que
do,
conocemos las pequeñas
let's
tareas
say,
en ese en la tutoría o desarrollar una
they
sesión
do this work
en
together
la
and they
clase
develop
en
some
ese sentido.
content.
Entonces,
They teach one part of the
se
class.
me pegó la presentación.
Give me just 1 second. My presentation got stuck.
Bueno, ahora sí. Pues un poco yo le estoy presentando
So here I am showing
esta iniciativa viene
this
dirigida
initiative,
a
which comes from Education
es
2020,
destinada
Chile,
pues a los
and it
sectores
was meant
del área rural.
for
Como ven,
rural areas. So as we can
yo
see,
quisiera rescatar
I want to mention from these
básicamente
images, I
algunos
want to
elementos
mention some
importantes para
elements which are important
poder hablar de todo el
in
tema
order to talk about the
de
whole
la
topic
pedagogía.
related to
Uno,
gender perspective.
nosotros
One,
hablamos
when we talk
de
about
pedagogía, hablar de la pedagogía de
when we
género,
talk about pedagogy
estamos
of
hablando
gender,
de
we're
una
talking
reflexión
about a
práctica de
reflection
normas,
of educational
la
practice
integración de los
and the
condicionamientos
deconstruction of
de
knowledge,
desigualdades que
attitudes,
generan desigualdades
skills
y la
which are creating
responsabilidad
inequality and the
para
production of cultural
poder
patterns
mantener el orden
of the
social
patriarchal in
y
order to
minimizar
keep the
las situaciones de violencia para que las
society
personas sean
trying
sujetos
to avoid
empoderadas y tomen
violence. So
decisiones
people are empowered, making
para
decisions that can transform their surrounding for the commonwealth,
decidiendo su destino y llegando a su
deciding their
plenitud.
destination
Desde Fe Alegría
in order to
Nicaragua
be
nosotros
free
mantenemos
from
una
fair alegría. We
metodología
also keep a methodology,
que la conocemos como redacción,
which is known
que se
as
llama
wording, which is called
transformación en clave de igualdad, que
transformation
viene desde un
for
enfoque de educación transformadora
equality.
comunitaria
It is
y lo
transformational
que
education,
busca es
and what it
que los
wants,
estudiantes sean
it
más
is students
conscientes
to be more
de
aware.
las desigualdades que existen
They are aware of
en su
inequalities
entorno, poder
in their
reflexionar
surrounding. They should think about that.
reflexionar, poder cuestionar
They
las
should
relaciones de
question
poder
power
en
relationships
la sociedad
between
entre
or
hombres
in society
y mujeres,
between
pues, y en ese
men and
sentido,
women. And in that
de
sense,
la de pasar de un paradigma de
they should go
competencia
from a
a
competition
una actitud
paradigm
colaborativa
to a cooperation
en ese sentido.
paradigm.
Y algunos elementos clave de la
Some key
metodología
elements of this methodology,
que es propicio y que también está muy vinculante
it is
a cómo ir
connecting, binding
o
in order to
integrando
debuild or
a
integrating this
el
perspective,
género hacia la colaboración,
gender perspective
vemos
for towards
que evidencia
collaboration,
bastante lo
cooperation.
que
So there
es el diálogo y
we
la
can see a
reflexión
dialogue and a relationship where
mediante
there's a
la paz
conversation.
también como un
This
elemento de
conversation, it is seen
construcción de
as an
paz
element for
esencial dentro de la
building peace. It
metodología.
is essential in the
Otro
methodology. Another
de los elementos que tiene la propia
element
metodología es
in this
pregunta
mentorship,
y la
it
pregunta
is the
es una
question, and the
herramienta
question, it is a tool for learning.
y aquí Freire hablaba
And
mucho
here Freire
de
talked
la
about
pregunta
pedagogy of
y
the
eso
question,
es lo que
and
define
that
el
it's what
proceso
leads
educativo.
the
En el
educational
futuro,
process.
el poder
In the future, we'll see the
de la
power
pregunta. Lo
of
tercero que es muy
questions.
importante dentro de la
Thirdly,
propia metodología
within the
tiene
methodology,
que ver
has
con
to
el
do with
material,
the
lo que se conoce
materials,
como el objeto de
which is not as
conocimiento.
the
Estas dos
work
cosas son
element. So these two things are so
para
important
poder integrar
in order to
y
integrate
hacer el abordaje de la
and
perspectiva
address.
de género
He's breaking, I'm sorry.
de diferentes contenidos.
Different
Luego
contents.
también tenemos otro
Later,
elemento
we have
importante
some
que
other
también es
important
clave
elements.
Perdón que te interrumpa, pero por favor pon
Vladimir,
tu
you
presentación
are
en silencio
not
un
showing your
momento
presentation. I'm sorry to bother you or to interrupt you.
no se está proyectando.
you are not showing your presentation.
que pongas compartir pantalla de nuevo.
So maybe you could share your screen again.
Ahí sí, ahí apareció, ahí está.
Now we can see your presentation.
Entonces, como le decía, pues estos son
So as I said
algunos
before,
elementos
these are some of the
de una
elements
metodología con
which the methodology
con
has.
ese adultocentrismo
We need to
en
break
el sentido
this
que la relación de poder es
centrism because the
hegemónica,
power relationship, it is hegemonic from adults
en niños hacia
towards
el menor de edad, y
boys
esto pues que
underage.
principio de la propia metodología
So it is part of the methodology where anyone can teach. And therefore we can see that children can teach adults. Also, we need to manage emotion and trust. We know that emotions within the patriarchy are given for women, against women. So there's, see how these emotions, feelings are addressed, how we can address the difference between the emotions of boys and girls. And we need to go from competition towards cooperation. When we talk about the catalog of mentorship, and here I will talk about the curriculum and methodology, we can say, or I'm even planning, which is one of the main tasks within teachers' work. When we talk about the catalog of mentorship, it is a working class, planning the educational process, the development of a content with some specific contents, or sometimes it is a program within a curriculum proposal considering some competences and skills. So in this sense, within the methodology and mainly of the catalogs, mentorship catalogs, it is important. Three things are important. The object of work, which in this case, it is the material the students is going to work with. And one of the main things being work in this mentorship has to do with the reading comprehension. So therefore, the work object, it is a reading document. And right there, it is really important to select the type of reading that we're going to choose. Readings that may address problems related to the socio-affective environment, values, environmental topics, up until gender perspective. Secondly, which is also important, has to do with the challenges which are included in the learning activities, where students, in the activities students have to do. And thirdly, the question. In my experience, I've seen that it is really hard. I mean, for children, it is hard. We have conveyed that they have to answer the questions which have not been asked, or the questions which are done by adults. And in practice, teachers, I have seen that it is really hard for adults to ask questions in order to create a thought or reflection. So the question, it is the one addressing the dialogue, the conversation, the educational process. And from questions, from all the questions, we can integrate any type of content. So the methodology itself has a didactical sequence as any lesson plan. See, here we have the 3P models. So in that sense, we have a didactical sequence, and just like in, or some methodological steps. So therefore, the methodology of transformation has its own steps, methodological steps, divided in 4 moments. The first one is where the students does an approximation. This is basically to include feelings, where he can has a first approach of what's happening in his surrounding, in his environment. There's a second moment where he can analyze and interpret and understand the reality related to violence inequality. And there's a third moment where he can also go deeper from what he can also deconstruct all of those relationships of inequality, of power. And finally, there's a moment where he can build viewpoint from peace and equality. So there's a whole process where the children need to identify, need to know their surrounding, what is said, heard about violence. They need to go deeper into that situation up until they get to the point where children can create some proposals for transformation on how this can be improved or even eliminated. Vladimir, you have 2 more minutes, not to exceed the time. Thank you. So what we did was creating a relationship between these two didactical sequences. So I am presenting the topic of this mentorship. So we created this from a curriculum content, we integrated this, and we developed the content of this gender perspective. There are some images here of what has been worked. For instance, this narrator, women from our country, this is included into the Nicaraguan curriculum. So when we talk about this topic, it is basically the value of men. So I will go really fast here because I am running out of time. This is the object work, which is the reading. This reading helps us in order to think of going deeper into the gender perspective through a reading. So in the presentation, we do the explanation on how we can work methodologically in this activity. And in order to finish, I am running out of time. Well, we have some contributions from our own experience. One, which is really important, it is this interdisciplinary work, and it creates an integration with reality. It is really important. We are going through, this is the 21st century, so we cannot go from just, we cannot just include information into this educational progress. We need to develop an interdisciplinary work in order to address different contents. Secondly, we're advancing towards a paradigm shift where there is a dialogue relationship between students and teachers. So through this methodology, there's a dialogue being created. Students and teachers learn how to have a conversation. Sometimes only teachers speak in the classroom, and here it is the other way around. This collaborative work of this methodology allows to change this cooperation instead of competition. Third or fourth important point, it is this reflection from the question in the educational process, which allows to question this power relationships. If we know how to ask questions, and how Chilean people say, powerful questions, we call them questions that generate something. From those questions, we will be able to question any type of relationship. We will be able to question the system. We'll be able to question what has not been questioned before. And finally, it is the emotion management. Children bring emotions. Children are said they should not cry. They should not feel anything. And we see how important emotions are in order to create a trust environment which guarantees the educational quality. If there's no trust environment between teachers and students, there will not be a proper learning. And that has been seen as a result of the pandemics. Thank you very much.
Vladimir,
Vladimir,
muchas gracias por tu presentación.
thank you for your presentation.
Puedes dejar de compartir.
Can you stop
Muchas
sharing your screen,
gracias.
please?
Bueno, muchas gracias por la presentación y por la
Thank you for your presentation and for the experience that you have shared. I want to emphasize some things. First of all, how important it is to include critical analysis from the students and teachers about the curriculum and how the curriculum reproduces these relationships of gender, which are at the same time, it has a hierarchy. There are some power relationships, as you showed in your presentation, about what literature is read at schools or analyzed, and they're usually related to men. So that is important. And also what you talked about this dialogue relationship, because as these power relationships are changed in the classroom, there are possibilities in order to live with more equality, acknowledging students as from a right perspective, as subjects of right.
Muchas gracias
So thank you very much.
por
Thank you
compartir esta
for
experiencia,
sharing that experience on how it was necessary to include this gender perspective
perspectiva de cómo crear
were in
tu
something which what was not
Bueno,
included at the beginning.
estamos muy cerca de la hora de cierre,
We're
entonces
about to finish,
tenemos una pequeña
so we
actividad
have one little activity.
tiene como objetivo ver
And the main objective, it is to see the projection of this working space.
necesariamente como
Not necessarily from a practice community. Maybe yes.
y no sé si recuerdan que
I don't know
trabajamos
if you remember that we worked with this methodology before.
de Jamboard donde todas y todos podemos
There's a jump
tener
board where you can all participate.
una pantalla con
There's a screen
poniendo
and you can
como
add your post-its
con nuestras ideas. Entonces,
with your
voy a
own
poner el
ideas.
link
So I will copy the link
pantalla.
and I will show the screen.
Pueden
In the
acceder
chat box, please access the link.
y voy a compartir la pantalla para
And
que
I will
vean
share the screen so we can see what's happening, what's going on here.
Por favor, te pido, Maciel, si me confirmas que la
So
pantalla se
Maciel,
ve.
can you see the screen? Yes.
Entonces, la pregunta
So the question is,
¿cómo se podría
how can we
continuar
continue working in education with a gender equality perspective
partir de esta comunidad?
from this community?
Ser temáticas que les
It could be
relevancia,
topics which are important,
también si se les ocurre otra
or
forma
maybe there are some other ways, or maybe, I mean, having these sessions,
o
periodical session, it is a
estimular los
positive
estudiantes
way.
a
I mean, I
realizar,
invite you
intervenir este espacio.
to
Si tienen
work,
problemas,
to
pueden
write
hacerlo a través
in
del
this
link.
space.
Nosotros vamos copiando y lo
You can
enviamos.
also write in the
Si
chat
ustedes
box.
aprietan acá al lado
If you click
superior,
here on the left bar, the fourth
aparece una nota a decir.
bottom,
Y ahí
there
ustedes
is a
pueden
post-it.
escribir sus
So that
ideas.
you can write your ideas and you can later share them.
Y los invito a que por favor
So I invite you to share your
vayan
ideas
poniendo sus ideas.
and please write your notes, post
Y me
your
confirman
notes.
si es que tienen acceso, ¿cierto?
Tell me if you
Al
can
link.
access
También
the link
vamos a estar atentas
and we'll
al chat,
be
si es que
paying
quieren
attention to the chat box. You can also contribute with your ideas in the chat box. You can share your ideas in the chat box. Once again, as we did last time, if you have difficulties with the link or with this application, with this tool, write your comments in the chat box. And with Jennifer and Fernanda, we're going to include it there in the board, on the board.
Entonces les invito a
So I invite you to think about that. Are there any topics which it would be important to address or go deeper into? Or maybe let's do a brainstorm here. New ideas in order to keep on working about this topic and go deeper into it, of course.
Perfecto, acá hay un aporte y voy a ir leyendo.
Perfect, then we'll read this.
Gracias, Florencio, por
Thank you, Florencio.
acá.
Thank you for joining us.
Les recuerdo la herramienta es la
And the tool, it is the fourth tab, the fourth bottom, fourth tab. That's the post-it. These meetings are important, but it is important to exchange good practices. It is important. We need to take this into something concrete, what we do, what is being done in the different educational spaces and from teachers training. Let's keep on reading. Men and women working with boys and girls, training, sharing experiences in qualitative, analyze, update approaches related to gender. Really good. Someone says sharing material for addressing and integrating gender perspective. I will take this comment to remind you that we have a repository of bibliography related to gender perspective in education. I've shared this link before, but I will share it to you with you all again. This is a repository which has been built. So this suggestion is really good. And we may also include some didactical material. But as I said, this is a repository which is done from cooperation. So cooperation and collaboration. So we're going to close this up. We're running out of time, but I want to show you this repository so you can see what is being gathered so far. And we invite you to share material so we can create this repository all together, which is also pertinent for all of the different territories of the KIX countries. So here, while you keep on completing the board, I will show you this repository. We're running out of time, but here we are. So this is going to be open. You can keep on completing it. And just 1 minute I will change the screen and I will show you this repository. So here we are. Maciel, can we see the page? Yes, we can. So you can access this link. I will send it to you again. This is a Google Drive file. There is material in 3 languages, English, French, and Spanish. Those are the community languages. Over there are different categories. We have educational policies related to gender. And over here, we have different documents from different countries with their own gender policies. We need to complete it. We need to add more material to have material from all the countries, all the territory. We also have practical material. We have a couple of guidelines. So there, it would be good to include more material. We also have reference related to gender research, which have been done in this relationship between gender and education. We also have some theoretical documents related to gender conceptualization. We also have some teachers training and gender. All of this, this is being built. We're building it all together. And finally, we have some documents related to feminism and education. So the repository is up to here. I invite you all to get into this repository, try to find some material, and also share more material with us. This is going to be open for all of you. You can also share with some other people. This is an open repository. And I hope we can keep on building it. So we are out of time. I just want to thank you all. Can you please share the link of the repository in the chat box? Yes, I will share it right now because someone may be willing to access right now. Please try to share material from your countries and we can also give you a feedback. So the link is there in the chat box. This session was brief. It has been really fast. So in the chat box, I will also share the questionnaire. This questionnaire, different from other sessions, it is to assess the practice community as a whole and to give us some ideas on how to continue. So please answer this questionnaire. Questions are what topics you'd like to keep on working on and addressing, and imagination on how to work on this work. How, which spaces, activities. I mean, all of the suggestions are more than welcome because we're really interested in your opinions. This is a valuable space for all of us. We also believe it is valuable for the community. And we need to see, I mean, these conversations are necessary. We need to address common challenges of the territory, and we need to keep on questioning ourselves on how we work these gender roles from education and how we create education which are transformational in every sense. So I invite you to answer that questionnaire and give us more ideas. I just want to thank you all.
han participado de esta y todas las secciones.
Thank you for participating in the sessions and all of the other sessions. This is a space which is so rich.
trabajo del policy brief o de la
This
síntesis
policy
bibliográfica
brief
sigue en
of evidence, it is still in process, work in progress.
bueno, vamos
So once we have it, we'll invite you.
todos invitados a participar
All of you are invited to
a este documento.
build this document.
Y, bueno, nuestra
And
promesa es que una vez
our
que
promise
tengamos
is
el
that
documento,
once we have the document, we're going
una
to
instancia para compartirlo,
create
para poder discutirlo,
a meeting
y
to
también,
share it, to talk about it,
difundirlo.
and also to spread it.
Maciel, Jenny, Cristina,
So Maciel, Jenny,
yo
any
creo
final
que
remarks?
agradecimiento
I just want to thank you all.
nos acompañaron hoy.
Thank you for being here.
Jenny, por favor.
Jenny? Well, thank you very much. I want to thank you all for having been part of this first cycle of this community, learning community. We hope you to tell us how to continue. It is important that we create some alliances for education with gender perspective in all of the countries. There are some people, there are countries who have advanced. Some countries have advanced a lot. We're still trying to do our best. From schools, we can create many different changes. So thank you very much. We hope this is not the last time that we get connected to this document. It is going to a collective creation, and it's going to be the beginning of many other things. So thank you very much. Thank you, Maciel, Fernanda, the whole KIX LAC team leading this activity. Maciel? I just want to say goodbye. I want to emphasize the richness of having so many different countries here talking about this topic. We showed it at the beginning, different realities, and the different problems. There are common problems. It is good to have these conversations talking about things that sometimes are not spoken in some countries. So I just want to emphasize this richness of territories. I want to thank you all, boy. I'm Fernanda, Jenny, of course. Thank you for this cooperation, collaboration, and please turn on your cameras. This is our last session, and we'd like to have a picture of this last session. So please, if you can, turn on your camera so we can have a group picture. Thank you very much. So Caro, are we ready? Just 1 second. I mean, people are turning on their cameras.
Listo, más, estamos.
We are ready. Thank you very much. I want to thank you all. We'll keep in touch. This is the closure of the first cycle. This is the closure of the first cycle, and we will have many more. Thank you.